Hi, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. It may interest you to know Tony Marcolini. I'm joined today by Scott Weinstock, who is the Vice President of Development for Strong Studios. So before I get into the tons of questions I have, let me just say welcome, Scott.
Thank you, Tony. Glad to be here.
And I'm so excited to have you here. I mean, most of the time I try to focus my podcast on creativity. And I think creativity takes so many different forms, you know, from taking a photograph to writing to making particular selections, even editing, what cut you're going to take. Or in your case, you're developing entertainment. You're developing shows that will be, gobbled up by the masses. And I think that's fascinating. You're in a position where you have to be creative, both creative in selecting, right, the projects that you're going to pick.
Oh, yeah, very, very much so.
And selective in once you're on, you're going, how will I make this successful? What are the choices to make this the right project? And that's a whole creative layered thing that has to be going on in your head. So I'm going to start with the easy question and say, what does the creative process look like for you?
Oh, geez. Well, I always say that every process starts with a blank piece of paper, right? Now, either you get that lightning bolt of inspiration to just sit down and start your fingers flying through the keys or, scribbling on a notepad, whatever your process is. Or there's other times where, you have been given an assignment and then you have to figure out how you best would tell the story. That's one of the things that I've always loved, the challenge of someone challenging myself. We've got this problem. We need a solution.
Sure. And problem solving is a whole creative thing unto itself.
It really is. I mean, it's like, it's every creative question is always looking for an answer. And there's a million different answers. You're hoping that you land on one of the right ones.
Right.
My barometer of success is if I can take what's on my head on the paper and then put it on the screen the same way it started in my head.
And I mean, do your solutions, do they just pop in your head? I mean, are you they come to me in the shower, I jog and they come to me while I'm jogging?
I mean, some of my best ideas have come to me on the treadmill.
Yeah. See, a lot of people will say there's a thing for me that triggers it.
Yeah. And as I've gotten older, my knees have taken more of a pounding and the running is less, then it comes to me in the gym. But yeah, it's just kind of, you know what, to me, the best answer isn't the obvious one.
That's interesting. So dig deep. Yeah. You dig deep. Yeah.
I like to go on the surface because to me, the obvious answer is the, brightest book on a shelf that anybody will walk to and take down first,
right.
And I want to be, what does this one over here say, that might have that great hidden nugget. I want to find that hidden nugget.
Oh, I like that. Now, how do you make a choice? Because you must be inundated, right, with different projects that are all, have value, I'm sure, because there's a lot of creativity in the world, and I'm sure you're presented constantly with quality work. What's the
surprise?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, there is certainly things that make you, go, whoa, I love where this is going. I love where this is taking me. I love what they've done. There are other things, and even the greatest writers will tell you, that you'll read something and you'll be like, don't know what they were thinking or how much time it took to come up with this.
What draws you in, Scott? I mean, when are you, knee deep in a new script going, yeah, I see it?
I kind of feel like not that every story has been, well, yeah, you could say almost every story's been told. I mean, there's always, the David versus the Goliath, or, love stories
Romeo
or
and
whatever.
Juliet. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just how they're told that always makes it different. I unfortunately don't do drama well because I tend to be snarky and a lot of my personal writing. I wrote a teen romantic comedy that we have on our development slate that had been very close to production in another place. And my manager introduced me to a bunch of studio execs, Zooms, who had read the script and really liked it. And when I would do the interviews and, this face would pop up, they'd be like, well, we're here to talk to your kid. And it's like, no, really, it's me. I kind of, I can write like a 17-year-old because I had one and I kind of get the snark. So, so I kind of like to look for stuff that's just very, has an effervescence to it. There's enough deep thinking, retrospective. I want to take something that I know if it entertains me will entertain a lot of people. And that's the kind of stuff that I gravitate towards, where it's just kind of, just light and intriguing and, loaded with personality and smart. I mean, nobody can appreciate, or not nobody, but everybody can appreciate clever writing when you look at something and you're like, oh my God, I wish I said that.
Sure. Agreed.
And it's just kind of like, oh my God, that's such a great joke. Oh, that's such a great line. Oh, that makes so much sense. And if you like, and it's so there, and it's like, I would kill to have that thought.
Well, I've interviewed Matthew Dix, and he's one of my absolute favorite writers. And what I love about him is in his novels, he always finds heroes in the most unlikely people.
I love that. I love ordinary people that are asked to do extraordinary things.
Absolutely. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. And there's the story, right? Isn't that the story?
And the protagonist that I like the best is the ordinary person who's asked to do extraordinary things, who's just happy being an ordinary person. So, anybody that goes kicking and screaming into that, next level of whatever you need to do, I'm fascinated by that person.
Oh, I love that.
The easiest thing to do for anybody is nothing.
Oh, yeah. You're absolutely right. The easiest thing is inaction, right?
The easiest thing is inaction, and there's people that are perfectly happy to just be inactive. I love identifying that person, saying there's something inside you, that can do something extraordinary. And we're going to find out how you do it, how you get there.
Right. And I think it's even, I'm even more drawn in when it's a story about somebody who I wouldn't expect, not just in their ordinariness, but, you just don't expect that person, right? That person is ordinarily overlooked by society for one reason or another. And I guess that what I find in his writing, he picks these somewhat overlooked people and makes them the hero of the story. And I love that.
Yes.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're somewhat,
the kind of person I gravitate to, and the kind of people that I've tend to write about in the past, isn't the overlooked, but it's the one that's just in the background. Who's the kid that loves to be back row, far left, like the last one to get into the class picture.
Tell me his story. Yeah.
Tell me his story.
Oh, yeah. I dig that. Yeah. I agree with you. So tell me about the story. You said you have a show right now in development with your studio. Before I get into that, why don't you tell me a little bit about Strong Studios? It's kind of, I don't want to say new, maybe new is the wrong word,
well,
but
it really kind of is. The person in the the captain's chair for Strong Studios is a guy named David Ozer, a very dear friend of mine. We actually went to college together. Though, 30 years later, this is our first chance to, well, the past couple of years was really our first chance to work together, and it just clicked. And David has run several production companies that have had the chance to really get some decent content out there. One company was IDW Entertainment, which is like the third largest comic book publisher in the country. And he was able to turn several of their IPO titles into successful series. One was Winona Earp, which ran on Sci-Fi and CBC. Or actually it was this was Sci-Fi, yes, Sci-Fi and Canadian television. And it got 4 seasons, and it was about Wyatt Earp's granddaughter. It's very paranormal. She basically fights Wyatt Earp's old enemies, present day, and really was a really, really fun show. Of course, I had to whisper to him that Wyatt Earp didn't have any kids, so we didn't have a granddaughter, but, we always have creative license. So, and then there was Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. That was a Douglas Adams book.
Right,
that was adapted into a series, and that ran a couple years on BBC America. And then he got done producing Willy's Wonderland, which was a Nicolas Cage movie.
Oh yeah.
That he did that week, because it seems to be that Nick does a movie every week. And that was a lot of fun, and came out really well. My background is in sports.
You did this great celebrity kind of mixed Disney NFL game regularly. Did you not? Let's talk about that. How cool was that?
It was, it was really cool. It was really cool because, it was, I had spent time at MTV. It's my career's been so
diverse.
Yeah, well, yeah, it has, because I mean, I was the executive creative director at the NBA for 15 years. So I did all of their internal and external messaging. So, all of their I Love This Game promos, whatever they would do for the playoffs or the finals, but I also ran all their PSAs. I produced all-star halftime shows. There was programming. I started Inside Stuff. So, I mean, I had a chance to live out a lot of childhood dreams, doing stuff like that. But I always wanted to be in entertainment. So what I tried to do is just approach sports as entertainment, which essentially it is. One of the things that we were really lucky about is that, you had your Nikes and your Reeboks and your Adidases that got to do the, hardcore street, in your face type advertising. And we had a chance to say, okay, you've got that, but our players are real people too, and they're very cool and they're very funny, and had a chance to really do a lot of fun things with those guys. I was actually the guy that got Shaq to say, I'm going to Disneyland for the first time.
Oh, cool. Not many people can say that.
Yes, it's true. So, when I gravitated from
sports
scale. Everything's a matter of scale. So, I mean, this was more like when I had gone to MTV for a couple of years, and I worked on a couple of Rock and Jocks. And so by working on Rock and Jock softball, you start off with a plan, and then everybody's out having a really good time, and people are batting out of order and, disappearing. And I mean, it's like, it becomes cat herding. It really does becomes cat herding.
I can imagine.
So this was essentially the same thing on a football field. I mean, we started off with, okay, we're going to do this, 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 and this. And within 10 minutes of starting, it's just kind of like, okay, take your rundown, throw it out the window, and we're just going to start, ad-libbing. And if you know how that goes, you can almost pre-edit in your head your storyline. So you'll know what to keep, what to drop. Oh, this is a great moment. I wasn't expecting that. So things like that are always made in the edit room, and you have enough wires on people, you have enough different angles on people, you always come up with something fun.
Sure. I mean, and I imagine at that point, there's like a plethora of clips to pick from.
Oh my God,
I mean,
yes.
anytime you put a group like that together, that's a very eclectic group.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think the thing that I really had to worry about the most was just, having to bleep Snoop if I had to. That was pretty much it.
yeah, that could be a full-time job
It
probably
really
by
can be,
itself.
but he was great. I mean, he knew where he was, so, and he knew who the audience was, so he was perfect. He was absolutely perfect.
So coming from your sports background, how do you transition more towards the entertainment? I mean, I guess all sports can be viewed as entertainment, though, to
Yeah,
a
I
certain
mean,
extent.
it's
What other category could you put that in?
it's I'm a pop culture junkie. I think you need to be. Um, I mean, I will if I'm playing Jeopardy and geography comes up, then I'm staring at the screen like Homer Simpson. You know, but if you put up any pop culture question, I'm running the category. So, you know, um,
Nice.
so I mean, it's almost like um, a second nature, I guess, to gravitate towards things that you just find really, really interesting. And there's so much content out. There really is. There's
Oh, well,
so much,
now more than ever.
you know,
Right.
and
Years
I
ago, it was only the basic studios, right? I
right,
mean, you had pretty much four or five choices, and that was it. And then cable came along, and that seemed like, oh, what a buffet, right? But now that everyone is streaming as well, I mean, the possibilities are endless. And I think people gobble up their entertainment differently, don't they, than let's say, when I was young.
they gobble up their entertainment differently, and they're finding things that are that just are so off the beaten trail. I mean, it's just kind of like there's so many things on Netflix. There's so many things on Hulu. There's so many things on Amazon. There's so many things on Apple. There's so many, that I mean, it's kind of like where, how are you finding all these things unless there's, red flashing lights that tell you that it's on. We discovered a wonderful show called Atypical on Netflix, and it was about mainstreaming an autistic child, but it was scripted with Jennifer Jason Leigh and Michael Rappaport. I mean, it had a wonderful cast, and we knew nothing about it, had never read it, just kind of tripped on it, had missed the first two seasons, and we loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I know that there are other things out there that are just like that, either I want to discover or maybe something that I did that I hope other people discover.
Right.
So, the choices are unlimited. And so if you're going to do something, you want to do something that's going to hold their attention.
Sure. I mean, are you, because you're in charge of development at this point, but it sounds like you're also creating
Yes.
um your own, your own content as well. So when did you um kind of transition between, like, a writer, from concentrating in sports, then you wind up, it sounds like, doing some writing, or maybe you were doing writing all along, and then now you're in charge of all of development for Strong Studios.
When we were, my time at the NBA was incredibly blessed. Whereas I had to pitch ideas, but I didn't have to pitch a budget. I didn't have to pitch, talent. I mean, all of these things were kind of just lined up for me. I knew what my budget was. I knew who I was going to use. I knew what the assignment was. And then again, like I said, it came down to me as to, tell the proper story. I always said that when you're given, when you go into something, there's your checklist, right? And if I can check every box with the story I want to tell, then I have earned the right to tell it the way I want to, because I've checked every one of your boxes. So I know that this is going to achieve everything that you needed to do. Okay. And now
Right.
it's up to me to deliver what I promised you.
Put your
And
put
it was
your own stamp on it. Bring your own
right. And
vision.
it was a wonderful fertile area to play in. And, myself and my crew, meaning my other producers and writers and everything like that, just had the most amazing time doing it. Were we successful 100% of the time? No. Was our batting average good enough to, kind of get you into some Hall of Fame? Yeah. I mean, look, if you bat 300, you're in the Hall of Fame. Our batting average was infinitely higher than that. So,
Yeah. So, I mean, so you bring your own vision to the projects, and that's what makes all the difference, right?
yes.
I mean, you have a vision that enables you to take somebody else's. I mean, I've said this before. This is not a secret. That's my opinion. I feel that your business in particular is very collaborative, right? I mean, from the writer who sits down and puts it on paper, right? And that's the paper version, that gets put out into the world. And then you take the paper version and you bring actors in to breathe life into those characters, and they bring their own quirks and nuances
100%.
to the role that kind of make them, right? And then there's the director who's visual storytelling weaves us through the story. Then you have the editor who decides what's the best cut of what he had, and puts everything together. And yeah, it's good to focus right on this drop of water here as we pull out, and figures all that out. So by the time the viewer is sitting there watching it, there have been so many hands in
there have been a
of,
lot of hands,
right? So it's collaborative. Like creativity in your world is
the
just
larger
collaborative.
the project, the more collaborative it is, because when there's more money at stake, and there are more stakeholders involved. So, I just got done with season 1. We're going into season 2 of Inside the Black Box.
Oh yeah, I want Joe Morton, right?
Yes, with Joe
Yeah.
Morton. It was a show that had been done several years ago. They did a pilot. It was self-financed by a producer named Dave Colin, who was pitched this idea and recognized it as something that was absolutely worthwhile. And they did a sizzle reel for it. And it came to me several years after it had been completed. And I'm like, where has this been? I mean, why isn't this thing on the air?
Yeah.
And the elevator pitch is that it's basically inside the actor studios for African Americans, but
Right.
it's about the issues that people of color face in the entertainment industry. So nobody's coming on to plug anything, but they're basically all talking about their journeys. And our audience is are acting students, much like James Lipton's audience, except we are actually doing performance exercises in the episode. And so these acting students are actually getting a chance to perform in front of, directors and actors and producers of, all great prominence. And we had an absolutely fantastic first season. Anybody can watch it. It's on crackle.com. It's free. It's video on demand. So just get the app and, Inside the Black Box. And
I have seen it. It is very good.
it was really it was an incredible project and really enlightening, for the fact that I had never been involved in something like this where everybody was vested, from, not just your hosts, or your marketing partners, but even the audience. I mean, our audience felt like, this was important to them and to be a part of it. And I've never been involved in a situation where just the entire ship was all moving in one direction, and nobody was saying turn left, turn right, go reverse. It was great. It was absolutely great.
You have Bob Maurer, right? Bob Maurer.
Yes,
Well,
Bobby Moore.
I'll give a shout out to. Hello.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Bobby Moore. One of my best friends. The first person I met when I was at MTV was Bobby.
Yeah, I consider him a friend as well, but we've crossed paths here and there. And I remember him telling me about this when it was just an idea.
Yeah, no, Bobby's the one
that
brought it to me. And I'm like, Bob, where's this been? But from the time that it got into my hands to the time we got it on the air was a year.
Yeah.
So even the simplest and great ideas, still have to get their rock pushed up the hill.
Yeah.
So,
Sure. So, I mean, when that came along, it resonated for you right away.
immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great show. I encourage anybody who hasn't seen it to check it out. It's definitely worth watching.
Yeah, I mean, it resonated with me immediately. And that all that credit goes to Dave Colin, who, was able to put it on tape first and see the merit of the idea. I mean, because there's so much stuff that you get that's just on paper, and you get decks and you get, prospectuses and treatments and all that other kind of stuff. And, then it's theater of the mind. You see if you can make it work.
Right.
This was right in front of me. I mean, it was just kind of like, I do not understand why this has not found a home.
Do you recommend that for people approaching you? What do you, I mean,
Look, anytime you can show instead of tell, the better.
right.
I mean, even if it's just, tear sheets, if it's something that is like, I want it to look like this, or this is the mood that I'm trying to create.
Right.
Any kind of visual aid certainly helps. If not the person who is deciding on to go ahead with the project, but for the other people that you're going to be showing it to, who may not be able to make that leap of faith that you've got in your head.
Right.
Creativity is if I'm amazed at how there are, you say if you get into an Uber in LA, your Uber driver is going to pitch you a script. He's going to pitch you a show. He's going to, everybody has an idea. It's true. I mean, there is so much stuff out there and it is not easy to do. I mean, to do something, to tell a story successfully is really hard. It's really hard because it's all Django. All you have to do is just take out one little piece and the whole house can just collapse.
Right.
And there are people that will write, that will come to that moment where they've got to pull the piece and they're like, well, if I do that, everything's going to fall apart. So I'll just skip that and I'll just keep going. And then of course you go back. It's like, but wait a second, what did you do here? Obviously this is what should have happened or could have happened. And, so you see things like that all the time. And it's not anybody's fault. People can write themselves into a corner. Lord knows I've done it, so many times. But I mean, it just goes to show you that it's just not easy. I mean, for every, Aaron Sorkin, for every William Goldman, for every, I mean, take any prolific showrunner or whatever, there's 10 million other people that are, toiling away at a Starbucks as
Yeah.
as silly or that might sound, but it's true.
Oh, it's very true. And to the credit, I mean, there are a lot of talented people. Your business is a hard business, right? It's not the same as if you want to be a plumber, you can go to school, become training and get a job as a plumber. But if you want to be a writer or have a show on TV, it's not as simple as get the training and do the job. Right.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? Also, I'm at the point in my career where I can honestly tell you what I think will work or what won't work. Because, if you're in the pitching seat and you're pitching to, any kind of development executive or program executive or whatever, and it's not their fault either, but their job is to keep their job.
Sure.
Because of the way that the environment is. I mean, it's, whoever thought that Netflix would have layoffs, So, I mean, it gets to a point where it's just kind of like, okay, my job is to keep my job. And while this is a great idea, I don't know you, I don't know who your producer partner is. I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And while this is great, either I'm going to take the idea and say, thank you very much. And, we'll take it from here. Or, yeah, we got to pass because, somebody else is going to come walking in with a wonderful idea that would take, your funds, and they're a much better known commodity. So, every writer faces that, and it's a catch 21. You can't do it unless you get the chance to do it, and you can't get the chance to do it unless you've done it.
It's a vicious cycle.
That's a vicious cycle.
Right. One of life's great paradoxes.
You know, but
Uh,
look, I mean, somebody wins the lottery every day. So
True. And there are ways, I think, to move yourself in. I think if you realize young that you wanted to take that path, certainly. I mean, even I know, get a job as an intern, get a job in the field, get your feet wet, make connections.
yeah, I've always wanted to do this. This isn't something that, some lucky break presented itself to me, and it was like, oh, I was going to be, I was going to actually be an auto mechanic, but, I guess I could do this instead. I had always wanted to do this. I mean, I made my first movie in 8th grade. And so,
Oh, you've had the passion. You have the
yeah,
passion in you from the get-go. I like that.
yeah, pretty much from the get. What my parents brought me, I mean, I'm aging myself terribly here, but what the hell? My parents brought me to see The Sting when I was a kid.
Great. Classic.
Yeah, and sitting there watching it was just kind of like, that was my moment. That was, I want to do this.
Well, how can you, Paul Newman, kind of lights up any screen.
But just the way the story was told,
sure.
it was the whole communal experience of sitting there with all those people in the darkened room, that were
Sure.
all getting surprised at the same time. I mean, there was no social media. There was no, spoilers that would, be posted as soon as something opened. It was all discovery at the same time. And, in that moment, I was like, I want to do this. I want to do this. And then they took me to see The Exorcist, and that's a whole different story. That was just kind of like, okay, you have no business raising a child. Because I was 12, and now I am going to be sleeping in your room until I go to college. So
horror is not my thing.
No, you know what? Horror's not and it's funny, horror's not my thing either. I think the most terrified I've ever been in a movie theater outside of something like that was Jaws. But Jaws was something that was just like so brilliantly horrifying. It wasn't bloody for blood's sake. I mean, it was like, it's one of those movies now. It has been for me forever, that if you just flip around the dial and you see it, you just land on it, you could pick it up at any point.
Oh, you can. And again, that's something that half of it is the music.
Oh, half of it is the music and the cinematography. And again, it's one of those stories where it was like, every arrow pointed to disaster. If you're familiar with the story of the making of it, I mean, it's like, shooting live in the ocean, and then not, where tides coming in and out, and sharks not working, and every day Spielberg thinking he's going to be fired, and and then you see something put together and it's perfection. It's the ultimate motivation.
What moment could you say for you? When's your moment that you look back and you think, my heart really went into this project, and I had that moment when I sat and I looked at the final project and I went, wow.
I've been lucky, where I was able to have that several times. I worked on a campaign for the NBA Finals, early 2000s. And if you were to look at the way that sports is promoted, it's kind of like, Lakers, Knicks, Sunday, and it's highlights and all that other kind of stuff. And when you're doing the schedule, right? And it's like, when do the finals start? When do they start playing the finals? When do they start playing the playoffs? And it's just kind of like, when do they start playing? It's coming soon. So it's just kind of like, well, why don't we tell this story as if it's an epic movie, and we're going to cut trailers. We're not going to be we're going to be cutting trailers. And so it's just going to give you the greatest snippets of what this story is going to be. And you're just going to have to follow along as they play to see how it ends. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
And by doing that, and I got, one of the guys that did trailers, his voice of God. I mean, he was, unfortunately, I don't remember the name at this point. I'm lucky I remember my name at this point. But I mean, it was one of those things that when we walk into the commissioner's office and we hit play, and he's like, play it again, play it again, play it again. That's when you know that, yeah, you cleared the fence.
Yeah. So you've had those moments, like, is there any particular project where you say, I was, unsure while I was going along and we were doing it, but when I saw the final result, I was wowed.
I mean, again, I handled so many different facets.
It's hard to narrow down.
It's the same thing as like after I left the NBA, I went to the NHL and I did the first promo campaign coming out of a very long and vicious lockout where the players and the teams really just hated each other. And it was just kind of like, hey guys, I know you hate each other, but I got to bring you together because, you need to work together to make this thing happen. And I did a campaign called My Stanley Cup. And I was so lucky that I was able to write for, Dennis Leary and John Cusack, and well, a bunch of other people, that it was just kind of like when you hear their words coming out of their, when you hear your words coming out of their mouth and they're really into it, again, you nailed it.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. These are stories not many people get to tell. Or
no, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's like you can pinch me. It's funny. I was thinking the other day that I did a campaign with James Brown. Now I recorded him remotely because he was down in Atlanta and I was in New Jersey, and I just needed wild lines. He wasn't like recording the picture, and he was fantastic. But I needed a little bit more James Brown in a couple other lines, and it was kind of like, James, I need a little, can you give me the, hey, or but I'm going to feel silly doing James Brown now. And he just said, young man, and when you hire James Brown gives you what James Brown's going to give you. And I actually put the phone on mute. I muted the phone. I looked at everybody in the room. It's like, did I just get yelled at by James Brown? That's the greatest thing ever. That's the greatest thing ever. My God, and I went back on the phone. It's like, whatever you want to do. It sounds good to me. It's just even that moment of getting, cut down by James Brown was
that's a great story to tell. You're definitely in the zone of not many people get to say that.
No, not many people get to say they got, yelled at by James Brown on a conference call. It was awesome. It was awesome.
Tell me what you're working on now. What are you developing
now?
We're
getting ready for season 2 of Black Box. We're about to sign a pretty big deal with a pretty prominent African-American actor and his producing partner to produce 3 projects coming up. I'm not at liberty to say what they are at this point. One is one that I've been wanting to do for years and years and years and years. Other people have tried to do the same subject matter, and for some reason or another have not been able to get it off the ground. I feel very confident with the group that we have put together for this. It's going to happen. And when it does happen, it will be amazing. Amazing. That will most likely be a limited series. I am also working on a show about Ray Allen's an NBA show. Ray Allen was one of the greatest shooters of all time. Hall of Famer, made the 75th anniversary team, and now he coaches his son's high school prep team. And it's a great story. The family's great. The family's gorgeous. I mean, they just take right to the camera. Ray is incredibly passionate about this. And this is somebody that could be coaching in the NBA. And it's like, no, I'd rather stay home and, be closer to my family and coach my family and coach my kids. So we're having discussions this week about moving forward with that, which, is really exciting. And then, I've got a couple screenplays that have just come my way that are really interesting. That we're going to see if we can get stuff together. We play in the lower budget type films. I mean, we're not blockbusters. You know, there's so much risk involved for the 25, 30, 40, 50, you know, those films that when you play in your, you know, $5 million category, you can still get an amazing story told with an amazing cast by amazing people. And it's more about the storytelling than it is about the pyrotechnics.
Right. Yeah. Now, and you're working on something of your own, you said there as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, one of my scripts is on our development slate to get produced, I hope within the next couple of years. And then there's another project of mine that I've got out and around that's kind of separate from Strong. And I don't think it's anything that can get done anytime soon, only because it's a period piece, you know, and how expensive those are. But I was so fast. I mean, it's a story I've been trying to break the code for 20 years, and I finally did.
Wow.
And I finally did. And it all started from just the picture of a photograph of a guy in the back row whose story I was wondering what it was. And,
Wow.
yeah, and that's very exciting. So, you know, that's out and about. And, you know, I mean, people will tell you, you know, you can talk to any writer, stand-up comedian, anything, you know, you can just wake up in the middle of the night with an idea and just, you know, write it down, or had a dream, you know, write it down. And then you either have it in you to tell the story, or, you know, you have to wait to have it in you to tell the story. So
Now, where do you want to take Strong Studios in terms of development? I know you're doing scripted and unscripted, but do you have a vision that you could share with us?
you know what? I would love to be a small studio. I mean, really, I'd love to be a small studio that, you know, I mean, I always kind of looked at Ryan Kavanaugh and Relativity before that thing exploded. But, you know, the way that he started the company, with just the way that he was picking the projects, and they used a little bit more analytics than I would like to, because, you know, I sometimes think you can make numbers work any way you want. You know, you ask anybody their opinion on any given day, who knows if you're going to get the same one. So
it's like lawyers who argue, right? We can all take the same law and argue it differently.
Exactly. So, you know, I would love to be able to do stuff like that. I mean, really find those, you know, great nuggets that there's absolutely no reason why they shouldn't be made, you know, other than it just hasn't gotten the proper attention.
So unique. I mean, you're driving towards the stories that aren't being told everywhere else.
I'm driving toward the stories that are not being told anywhere else. And, you know, or if it's a genre, you know, that, I mean, you know, people, a lot of writers will, and me included, will, you know, be a dog on a track chasing the rabbit, because once that's been deemed the hot thing, you know, then everybody starts chasing it.
Right.
So, you know, what I'm looking to do is to try to find, even if it's in that specific genre that everybody's jumped onto, that unique voice. You know, what is it about this story that really deserves to be told?
Yeah, that's a hard mountain to climb.
It is, because everybody's looking. But again, like I said before, a lot of people's job is to keep their job. You know, David and I are so comfortable with each other and our opinions that it's kind of like, you know, it's not like we're not afraid of making a mistake.
Yeah, and sometimes I think you need to make mistakes, right? Don't you need to make mistakes to get where you're going?
I mean, that's the only that I have learned way more from the stuff I've messed up than the stuff I've done correctly. You know,
I think that's true of everyone, right?
Yeah,
You learn more in in your failures than you do in your victories.
you really do. And then, it may not even be an outright failure. It just might be a failure in your head. That it's just kind of like, if I had only done this instead of that, you know, that's the thing that sticks with you. I mean, Christ, I started Inside Stuff in 1990. I did a story on Casey Jones, who was the coach of the Celtics at the time. All right. Now, I have done hundreds, if not thousands, of pieces of content. And I remember that one specifically because I did something in it that I just didn't like. And I've never forgotten it.
Yeah. I can think back over my lifetime, and the lessons that have stuck with me are the ones that, I see the error, I
Yeah.
I can trace the moment I made the mistake. And those are the ones that stick with you.
And the things that I find so exciting now, I mean, it's like, I went to Emerson College in Boston. It's
Are you originally from New Jersey, correct?
Yes, I am from New
Yeah.
Jersey. I'm
Yeah.
from New Jersey. And Emerson actually is in the news this week because one of the kids from Stranger Things is wearing an Emerson shirt via 1985, which is just around the time that I was there. So, it's just kind of, oh, so cool.
Yeah.
And, I tell my daughter's 25 and she's my associate producer. So she works with me, who also went to Emerson. And I tell her that it's like, you don't want to be the guy that says I walked a mile to have to go to the cafeteria when I actually really had to walk a mile to get to the cafeteria. I said, we would be shooting. We would go and we'd do a project, and we had no idea what we shot until it came back from the lab the next day. Okay. I mean, we waited. That's what we had to do. I mean, it's just the way it was. It was a given. You shot all day, you stuck the negative into an envelope, you shipped it off to the lab, you got it back the next day, and you had no idea if it was in focus or not. You were just open, as opposed to everybody that can, shoot on their iPhone now.
Instant playback.
It's instant. And it is it's created some amazing storytellers, that it's kind of like, if I had to compete with these kids on that playing field, I don't know if I could play.
Well, you're training your mindset, because the generation today, they're doing this from young, right?
Yeah.
There are 5-6-year-olds who are already playing around with their phones, who have that, I guess, that passion, that's just that creative bug that's in them, like it was for you, who are already trying to tell stories, visual stories, from when they're young. And they get trained in using the equipment. They start learning how to use editing apps before, back then it was,
I mean,
back when we were kids, we couldn't even fathom, that kind of availability of technology, right?
no,
I remember my high school started bringing computers in. I mean, that was huge.
Well, to me, the first time I really saw, a real computer, was like in War Games, and it took up the entire floor, right? In the Matthew Broderick movie, it was the Whopper. So now any big computer I call the Whopper, but you thought it was the coolest thing in the world because it had all the flashing lights and,
Yeah.
the wheels that were spinning, and it's incredible that, that this has as much technology in it as the Apollo moon mission.
Yeah.
And it's all the benefit to the next generation, the generations after that, of storytellers, that are proliferating everywhere. And it's exciting and intimidating.
Sure. I mean, in your mind, do you label yourself a writer, or more of a producer, more of an executive?
You know what? This is the thing I've always said. And there are people that, call me a writer, but I've never considered myself a writer, because writers write. That's their job. They sit down, they write. I've never been someone that can just sit down and do that. I just don't have it in me. I'm too easily distracted, squirrel. I mean, that's just the way that my brain works. But producing is more of a long-term thing. so I can get into a project as a producer and then start, the pieces, and, then it's much easier for me to focus on the roadmap that we need to follow to get this thing successful.
So
And
more of a
all my
visual.
other skills will kind of come into play with that as a writer, to be able to identify, what's working, what's not working, or to be able to write myself.
So more of a visual storyteller.
Yes, that's exactly what I would label myself as.
Yeah.
I'm a visual storyteller. Yes.
And
Yeah,
a craft
I put that
unto.
on my card.
Yeah, I mean, because that's
Right?
what you're doing, really. I mean, there were different ways to tell stories. Certainly, the novelist tells a story through their book, their writing. There's something very isolating, I think, about writing that way, because you only ever have a relationship with your computer for the most part. I mean, you're there and you're writing your novel, you're writing your story. There aren't really other hands in it, even though
And
editors come in.
that's incomprehensible to me, as that somebody that'll write a 300-page book.
Yeah.
It's, my God, I mean,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's a gift in and of itself. I think, to keep the interest of the reader. I mean, no, and the people who listen and watch podcasts, it's not a big secret. I'm an obsessive reader. I call myself, because I'm never without a book. I sometimes read 2 books in a week. I mean, I definitely my passion is books. I mean, I have a library card. I love.
as does my wife.
Your
Loves the
library is
library.
great. You
Yeah,
gotta love the
loves it.
library. Um, but I like all types storytelling. I also can appreciate a good film, a really well done show. I like, I guess, a story, even though books are my first love. So I think it takes, where is your talent, right? There are certainly novelists who have that talent. They're able to isolate themselves and tell the story and make it interesting and take you on a ride. My litmus test for the best books I've ever read are irresistibility, right? I like my story to be irresistible. I start the book, it's just, I can't put it down. I can't stop. It's just irresistible for me to get to the end. I think the same is true with your craft, because you have to have the ability to tell the story through only the vision. I have to be able to see the story. It's very different than reading the story. And I think, to tell that well, to tell it compelling, truly is a gift. And it's a craft that I imagine you work on for years. There's no replacing you with a 17-year-old, as you said, the young people, because you need experience, right? You need to know what works and what doesn't, when you're telling that kind of a story. And I guess you've kind of honed your craft. It's a gift. And I mean, I think that's amazing.
What's funny is that when I tend to read, I don't read fiction. I don't gravitate to fiction, though my viewing choices are everything: science fiction, fiction, I mean, just anything, show me a great movie, great. But, a book, I either love historical or historical fiction.
Yeah.
So, I
Great
love a
genre.
story. I love historical fiction where it will take, somebody and put them in a set of events that I'm familiar with and give me another piece of that story that I'm unfamiliar with.
Yeah.
You
I'm
know?
with you there. I like that as a genre quite a bit.
So, but it's funny though, too, just going back to writing, and these are just things that I kind of I taught myself or learned or let myself learn, I guess, is that there are so many rules. There's so many rules for writers. There really are, and some of them can just drive you nuts. It really can. It's like, what? Why? Huh? Inciting incident on page 3. This act 1's got to be done by this page. Blah blah blah. And I took the Robert McKee writing seminar back in the 90s. If you saw the Nicolas Cage movie, he plays the twin with Meryl Streep. It was based on White Orlando or something. I keep forgetting the name of the movie.
It'll come to me.
Okay.
Before we're off, it'll come to me.
And Robert McKee was actually a character in that movie. And Robert McKee was the most eminent screenwriting instructor. Books, if you wanted him to read your script, you paid a hefty fee. And when he taught a class, it would be for a weekend in a giant seminar. And he spends 2 days talking structure, this, that, whatever, and I'm kind of just jotting down notes that don't make any sense to me. And the last day he shows Casablanca. And he points to Casablanca as the most perfect screenplay at that time to have been written. Now, I had seen Casablanca before, but not in the context that he showed it. And I just learned the 2 rules that I've ever needed to write. 2. That was it. One is that for anything good that happens, something bad has to come from that. From anything bad that happens, something good has to come from that. So it's just kind of like, okay, I'm Humphrey Bogart. I own this restaurant in Casablanca. I'm having the greatest life of my life. Oh, here comes the woman that broke my heart. It just went from good, I went to bad. Of all the gin joints of all the world, she walks into my place. Oh, she's still in love with me. Here we go. Now that's good, right? She still loves me. Oh, but her husband is a war hero. Oh, bad. So, I mean, again, that movie just had so many, ups and downs, up and down, good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. And I'm just kind of like, brilliant. I can follow that roadmap, so as I'm laying out the beach for any kind of story, it was just kind of like, okay, if something good came from here, what can I do now to make something bad happen? And the other thing that I learned that I use all the time is that a coincidence can't get you out of trouble. It can get you into trouble, but it can never get you out of trouble. And I'm like,
wow,
right?
I
And
like
it's just
that.
and it's just, I'm in a high-rise building and it's on fire. Okay. Oh, look, a fire extinguisher. Well, that's too easy a coincidence. Now if I take it off the wall and I spray the fire and the fire goes out, I just broke one of my laws. If I take the fire extinguisher off the wall and I spray the fire and nothing comes out, now that coincidence just got me into even more trouble.
Yeah, you know what? I never really thought about that.
Yeah.
That's something interesting.
And you'll notice that now in so many things.
I will. When I went to law school and I first learned about torts, I remember my professor saying to me, you'll start picking out torts everywhere you go. You'll drive past accident scenes now and you start picking out, that actually happened. But, now I'm going to do that. Now I'm going to be able to pick that out. And I think I'm going to test your principle.
Please test it. And when you see that I'm right, you'll be like, damn, how could they do that? That was just too easy.
Now I'm going to be writing to you. Like, it just happened.
I'm telling you, you're going to see it all over the place. So.
Wow. So you've had so many moments across your career. Could you tell me what your most memorable moment was career-wise? I mean, obviously, personally, I'm sure, the birth of your children. I mean, there's a lot of memorable moments, but career-wise, what's your most memorable moment?
You know what? It's tough talking about it because, I don't, want to sound like a dick. But the one thing that I always remember, because it came from somebody that I really, really respect. There was a great basketball writer. His name's Bob Ryan, writes for the Boston Globe. He's since retired, but he still does stuff on ESPN. And we don't know each other. But I had come up with a campaign for the NBA Finals. It was different than the one I was telling you about. And he wrote about it, completely unsolicited. It was one of his, columns where it's just all whatever's on his mind. It's just stream of consciousness. And he wrote a huge bonus and an A+ to the person that came up with, this campaign. And that just meant the world to me because I always say that, you in any business, but especially this one, you really have to have a thick skin. You really do, because you can't make everybody happy. It's not possible. There'll be people that love something, and there'll be people that don't like it for whatever reason. And, you just gotta go with it. I always say it's like, the first time you're naked in front of a date, people, they're either going to go, who, or they want to, or want to have nothing to do with you. I mean, you just expose yourself. You're naked every time that you put something out there for public consumption. And to have somebody that I respected as much as I did write that and know that was specifically aimed towards me was incredible. And I've won a sports Emmy the first year that I was producing. That's what got me attracted to, that's what the NBA got attracted to me about. I did something in college that won a national award, just a passion of mine about, people that were dying from boxing. I mean, all those things were huge because, back then I was kind of learning to do what I do, but this happened after I had become a fully formed professional and was, put something out there for the world, and to get that kind of a reception really was very special to me. Very special to me.
Well, Scott, I mean, you've had a career somewhat unparalleled in your experiences. And I think it's very hard. I love talking to creative people because I really do think it's hard to share publicly with the world ideas that are just in your own head, right? Something you create and you like, and you created, it's like creating anything. I mean, and then you release it to criticism, to viewing and criticism.
Yeah.
I think it's a really hard thing. So I have an enormous respect always for creative people.
And I have a tremendous respect for people that it comes easy to. I'm like, that's, God bless you. That's fantastic. Comes that easy to you, because I mean, like I said, it's not easy. It's hard. I mean, there are sometimes, the words are there, they don't want to come out. You want your character to do something, but you've written it so that they can't. There's, and you have to be able to take criticism. You have to be able to take advice. You can't show something to somebody, and if they give you what their opinion is, you can't. Your first reaction shouldn't be defense.
Yeah, I agree. You have to be open. It's collaborative, and if you don't want to be collaborative, I think that's a rough field to get into.
Yeah, there's very few auteurs.
Yeah.
And the ones that know who they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I agree. I mean, this hour has just flown by. I can't believe the interview's over. I'm so enjoying our conversation. I hope you'll come back again.
I'd love to. This was terrific.
You're very good.
And thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it was a pleasure to sit and chat with you. I just even pick your brain. I think a lot of people will enjoy, hearing from somebody at your level what's going on, when you're creative, when you're selecting. And I think there's a lot of good lessons in here for young screenwriters who want to move forward with a project on a bigger scale. I think you get a lot of valuable information, and you're just creative, and you can never go wrong. I said this in the last podcast I did, no one ever said, I'm too educated, right? I know too much. So I think that getting the opportunity to hear what's going on at somebody of your level is priceless. You're like MasterCard now.
It is tough though, watching things with other people, knowing, the process, where it's just kind of like, oh, I can't believe they did that to so-and-so. And it's like, no, the whole idea is you take as many obstacles as you can and you throw that in front of the character. If this didn't happen in this episode, we wouldn't be watching it,
Absolutely, right? That's the whole premise.
Yes, absolutely. It's fantastic they got engaged and they're on their way to get married, and there's a reason they're in a car accident. Okay. I mean,
aren't you really telling the story of life? Doesn't life look like that? I mean, how many fairy tales do you know that happened in the real world? Isn't the real world filled with
obstacles?
Yeah, it's filled with obstacles and high moments and low moments, right? When I look back across my lifetime, there's bittersweet moments. There is enormous moments filled with enormous joy, and moments filled with enormous sorrow. right? It's you run the gambit. It's the up and down of life, and telling
That's
that.
why every new day gives you another opportunity.
You said it, Scott.
Every new day gives you another opportunity. If yesterday sucked, hopefully tomorrow won't be, gives you another chance.
Agreed. You said it. And I think that's important in telling a story well, because it's got to, for me, it should somewhat parallel life, right? It's great to tell a fairy tale if you're telling it, to a child, but, to most people, they want to see something that more reflects their own journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Or, again, you get vested in a character that you feel like they're your friend, that these people. But that's also like one of the stupid rules I write to is that, people I like, people I want to be like, people like me, if I can hit that group while I'm writing, then I've kind of checked. That's like one of the boxes that I'm checking.
Right.
Because that's what you want. That's why you root for someone, because you either you see yourself in them, or you want to become them, or you'd love to be able to know them.
And I think, that what you provide, I've said this before too, but I think the entertainment industry is somewhat underrated in this regard, because people are going through so many different stressful events in their life, right? Whether it's, a divorce, or, battling, a disease, right?
News.
Yeah, or just the news, right? There's so much stress out there as to what's happening and what your experience is. And if you can step back from that, and find some joy or distraction, and with a movie or a TV show or a book, I mean, that's priceless. It's priceless. I mean, I said before, I'm a cancer survivor, and I remember going through those moments. And for me, I would put on a sitcom. Like, I could sit and watch 3 hours of Everybody Loves Raymond and just get lost in that, because it was somewhat of an escape from what was happening at the time for me. And I think to put that kind of comedy or joy in the world, something where somebody can get lost and take a step away, from what's happening in their life, it's a priceless thing that you're doing, which is why I think it's very underrated.
You know what? It's very tough. And just being just playing media critic right now, it was very tough to find something to get truly passionate about lately, with all the stuff that's just been happening, and terrible headlines and one thing after another, that it kind of felt that what I'm doing is kind of superfluous, until I saw what the big story was coming out of this weekend of, such a time of despair. And it seemed like this country, for a brief moment, got rescued by Tom Cruise.
I hear what you're saying.
I mean, people flocked back to movie theaters, to lose themselves in 2 hours in this, familiar property. I mean, everybody knows Top Gun, but then to come out of it feeling the way that they did really says a lot for what a storyteller is capable of doing.
I agree. I mean, I'm going to close the podcast on that note, because it can't be better said. It can't be better said. And I'm going to say thank you so much for joining me today, Scott. I look forward, and hope you mean it and you will come back. And I absolutely look forward to talking again.
And just for anybody that's watching, if they're wondering why I still have paneling in the house, it's my homage to the Boston Garden, as the Celtics are starting to play in the finals this week. So that is why. That is the Boston Garden parquet floor.
Well,
Bunny, thank you. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you. I'm going to say goodbye to everyone. Thank you for joining us, and have a great day.
Bye-bye.